find such a love at our age. Whoever thought we could dance on a thrilling...
Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I'm your co-host, Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Hello, Judy. Hello, viewers and listeners. Judy, what's today's podcast about?
Managing Conflict in Marriage, an interview with Dr. Jessica Higgins.
Yes, indeed. And we just finished that interview, and we had a blast.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, we did. We talked about a lot. Actually, it's funny. I had come up with that title before we just did the interview, and it really covers a lot more than just managing conflict.
Yes, it does.
A lot of stuff. If you're into emotionally focused therapy, the late Dr. Sue Johnson's thing, if you're into attachment theory, and I'm making it sound more nerdy than it was. In fact, Jessica was really great about turning to you when the two of us would start nerding out, and turning to you for some actual, like, how about some
like the real people
content. So that was nice. But anyway, that we had a really enjoyable conversation. I hope you'll check that out. Before we get there, just the usual stuff we like to say: buy our books. Why don't you put in a plug for your book signing? We're recording this in the beginning of August 2025.
Right.
And
so on September 14th, 2025, I will be appearing at my local Barnes & Noble, which is in South Burlington, Vermont, doing a book signing for my book, The Blue Tent, Erotic Tales from the Bible. Well, actually, Laria Zilber will be there doing the book signing.
And I think you said you're going to appear as Laria.
I will appear as Laria.
Which involves the blue wig.
Go to TikTok if you want to see Laria.
Or TikTok, or you can go to
Instagram.
Or her website, lariazilber.com.
Right,
Go to lariazilber.com. You will see a bunch of taped interviews with Laria. I keep trying to get you involved in the interviews we do with Laria, but you're never available.
One of these days.
Anytime where I'm interviewing Laria,
the 3 of us together.
You're never available. I think we have also, by the way, folks, here's a little teaser.
Yeah.
We've talked about, this probably isn't going to happen for a little while, but we talked about interviewing Laria on our show, which, again, I'm trying to line it up so that both you and Laria can be available for that interview. I've never been able to do that, but
I'm
going to try.
One of these days.
Possibly through the magic of editing, we might actually be able to pull that off.
We just might.
We might. So we'll see. No promises, folks. The other thing I want to put in a little teaser about is I am working on a new book. Should I say the title? Is it too soon to say the title?
Have you decided on the title?
I've decided on the title.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
So at least the subtitle might change, but the title of the book is, drum roll please, or fanfare please, The Passion Paradox. And the current subtitle is When You Love Each Other and Feel Miles Apart. Oh no, I think it's When You Feel Miles Apart and Still Love Each Other. That's what it is. When You Feel Miles Apart. A workbook. This is a workbook that I'm working on. So why am I putting out this little teaser right now? I'm not even done writing it yet. It's probably going to be another month or 2 before I'm done writing it. But what I'm going to be looking for, and it's not too soon to write me and tell me if you're interested in this. What I'm going to be looking for is folks who would like to read a pre-publication copy, do the work. It's a workbook. Do the work. Now, this, that means if you are in a relationship that feels troubled, especially, I would like some of you folks to do this, because you're the market. I can have you do it, and I've mentioned to Judy, I'm happy to say you're not my target market here.
Right.
I want you. You're going to be my first reader, of course, because you always give me great feedback. But I'm looking for
a troubled relationship.
You're not. Thank God. Yeah. But there are plenty of folks who are, clearly.
Yes.
And so I'm going to be looking for folks who are willing to do that. And what I'm asking in exchange, I'm going to be asking a little bit in exchange for this. I'm asking that if you agree to do this, that you will, of course, give me feedback, right? That's what I'm looking for. To whatever level of detail you want to. The more detail, the better from my perspective. And if you like it, I'm asking you to commit to buy the Kindle version, whatever's cheap. Spend $2.99 or $3.99, whatever, or $4.99, whatever it's going to be, on the Kindle version when it comes out, so that you can review it as an actual purchaser. And then I want you to, of course, only do that if you're going to give it a 5-star review. And do a review. So that's what I'm going to be asking you to commit to do. And look, I'm not assuming you'll like it. If you don't like it, I don't want you to review it.
Right.
But if you don't like it, like it or not like it, I would like you to at least give me feedback. So I'm going to be recruiting people to do that. If that is you, drop me a line. You can contact me through our podcast website, ctn7.com. You can send it to me directly, bruce@brucechalmer.com. And let me know, and I'll put you on the list. I'll write back and say thanks. And when the pre-publication version is ready, I will send it to you, and we'll be off and running. So let's get on with the interview,
Okay.
and we'll see you on the other side.
Our guest today is Dr. Jessica Higgins. Dr. Higgins has 2 graduate degrees in psychology, 2 coaching certifications, and over 20 years of experience helping clients. As the host of the Empowered Relationship podcast and through her coaching and online course, she helps people navigate the terrain of long-lasting intimacy more skillfully and mindfully. Jessica, welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here.
Well, we're delighted to have
Pleasure.
you, and I'll mention for viewers and listeners that I was on your podcast back a few months now, I guess, and really enjoyed that, and so we're delighted to have you on ours. We always like to start off by asking guests, how'd you get into the work you do? Tell us something about your own journey.
This could be a long talk.
We
I,
we got
I
we got time.
we've got time. Well, generally, people ask me this question, and in middle school, junior high actually was where I went. And I remember proclaiming that I wanted to be a psychologist then. And my mother even reflected back to me, even as an early child, she felt very astutely naming emotions and contemplating why people were doing what they were doing. So I think I have a inclination towards loving people, being curious about them, being super interested, and also looking at the dynamics. And then when it comes to more specific couples and relationship focused, fast forward, had a master's degree in psychology, undergrad in psych, had grown up in a family that was pretty open as far as personal growth strategies, communication exercises. I was being taught I statements from a very early age. I thought I was pretty well equipped to negotiate the landscape of intimacy. And lo and behold, I felt extremely confronted with what gets activated in relationship, and really spawned me into a deep look at my own unconscious tendencies and utilizing a lot of books. I'm happy to name some of them, and was already entering into a PhD program, and really set me on a course to look at, are other people practicing these principles, these real conscious, intimate relating principles? Because I don't think in media or families and culture, we get a lot of visibility to this very intimate space.
Mhm.
So nonetheless, it prompted my dissertation and exploring the themes, or are other people doing this work? And that was back when I was finishing up my PhD and my dissertation. So completed that, and then I have been doing the work ever since.
Wow. So you're saying it's actually the case that therapists themselves, I mean, we therapists occasionally have problems ourselves in relationships and things. I'm shocked to hear that.
I know we're human and we have the full range of emotions and have had overwhelming experiences and sometimes trauma. Yes, absolutely.
Wow, I mean, I don't know what our listeners are going to do with that. That there's going to be people fainting all over the country,
You
and
think
all over the world when they hear that.
not perfect, huh?
Yes, indeed. So
Yeah.
let me ask, in terms of some of the stuff, the particular stuff you've talked about, written about, why are couples often surprised with conflict? You get into a relationship, and of course, we always immediately find the perfect person and who's perfect for everything, and then a conflict occurs. Why are couples surprised by that, do you think?
Uh, well, I'm sure you have your own thoughts about this. I will say there's many contributing factors in my mind. I do think it does lend towards what messagings we were exposed to, media. There's in the US a very strong, I think it's changing. I think the collective dialogue is changing, but I think there's a lot of emphasis on partnering, finding the person. So when there is that bond or there is that partnering, I think the expectation is, it should be easy. Love will conquer all. And
Right.
this is further complicated by the neurochemicals that are activated when we do bond, and that's what we call the romance stage, and typically last 9 months to a year and a half. And this is where we will not only be fueled by the neurochemicals, but psychologically project a lot on who we imagine this person to be. We don't know them in all the seasons. We don't know that how they handle grief and anger. We just imagine, so we fill in the blank. Then come to that power struggle stage, depending on what language we're going to use here. We will start to recognize differences. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that I believe I keep quoting, and I've had so many people, even the clinical director of the Gottman Institute on the podcast. And I'm not sure how to fact check this, but I remember hearing that 7 to 8 irreconcilable differences occur in every relationship. This is the
Mm.
introversion, extroversion, the spender, the saver, the one that's on time, the one that's more spontaneous. And that these potentially can be real ripe for friction and tension. And really, what we're up against, excuse me, in relationship is the curriculum for
Mm.
developing, and how we negotiate those differences really the determinant of, I think, feeling more success. But the surprise is often to, I will reference attachment research here because I think that's a huge component, that we may feel thriving in other domains of life, not feel the static or the threat or the friction. And when we enter into an adult romantic relationship, this is where our attachment system gets very activated. And so, if we have an early experience in life where our attachment system didn't have the opportunity to have secure enough functioning, that means our caregivers were responding to us consistently, predictably, and we got to feel a sense of trust that we are safe in the world, people will respond to us. And so, that relational imprint is, there's a clarity around how that works. When we didn't have that opportunity, there can be a lot of ways in which we protect ourselves or feel anxious. And the system's activated, which activates the fight or flight, freeze, the nervous system. And so this can be really disorienting when we feel like a very competent, professional,
Mhm.
successful adult, and then we feel an intimate relating just completely rattled. And
Mm-hmm.
there can, as I said, a lot that can go into that, but those are a few.
Yeah, what I remember from Gottman, it's interesting. I don't remember the number thing about the number of differences. What I
Yes.
do remember him saying is that the number of differences itself doesn't really predict anything, and that and he comes up with some too exact number, like
He's such
68%,
a
I think was the number.
mathematician.
He
Yeah.
is. I really love that about him because I'm a kind of a nerdy guy myself, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, his I think it was like 68% of the problems they report as newlyweds are still there 20, 25 years later. And
Right.
then exactly as you were saying, the stuff that's more or less the personality stuff, the stuff that's pretty stable, doesn't change that much, those differences are
Right.
still going to be there. And indeed, how a couple is doing is all about how they manage the differences. It's not about the lack of differences.
Right.
It's how they manage them, exactly as you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
and what freaks them out or
perpetual
what doesn't.
problems versus solvable problems, right? Many of our
Mhm.
our conflicts are perpetual, to your point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the ability to accept those perpetual the stuff that isn't going to change much, the stuff that's
Hmm.
this is sort of who somebody is, more or less. I'm not saying, personality doesn't mean it never changes. It's sort of, I think, the sort of by definition in psychology, it's the stuff that doesn't change much. It's
Hmm.
pretty stable stuff over the lifespan. And and I know it's one of the things we actually did a podcast on this once of what I claimed. It happened that we had a guest lined up, and she had a family emergency and canceled at the last minute, just didn't show actually. And so we're sitting there. You may recall this. Of course, you recall this. You're sitting there about a year ago, I think it was. And I said, "Oh, I know. Let's do a podcast on the one relationship skill that solves all relationship problems." And you gave me a look like, "Oh, really?" Because Judy's the real yeah, I'm the
I'm the
therapist. Yeah,
therapist.
she's the real person. So she looked at me, "Oh, seriously?" Right? And I said, "Yeah, it's the ability to be moderately annoyed."
Mhm.
And it is exactly about, in Gottman's terms, it's about managing those irreconcilable differences, which of course I always like to point out. I need that. Judy needs that skill way more than I do because I'm way more annoying than she is. So she needs that skill of managing moderate annoyance much more than I do because she
You're
doesn't
too
annoy me.
kind.
But yeah, but that's how that works. But no, that is it is interesting that the Gottman stuff. It's interesting because Gottman himself, I don't think quotes much of the attachment literature. He's too much of an empiricist for that. He's just saying this is what the data shows.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and
So one
I
of the, oh, go ahead.
well, just quickly, I'm not incredibly proficient about the relationship between Dr. Susan Johnson, who's since passed, and the Gottmans, but I do remember hearing her speak about that he heavily endorsed the
Oh, yes.
modality, the therapeutic modality, and that they're very likely related
Oh,
and
they are
supportive.
quite simpatico. Yeah, I remember. I saw that too. They were on some panels together and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I saw you talking about, there are two conflicting needs in a relationship. You want to talk a little bit about that and what they are
Yeah.
and go into
Yeah.
that a bit?
Yes. Well, just in a fundamental place, I can speak to people who have brought this to the couples field, but it has to do with the sense of autonomy, individuality, or what we might call differentiation, and also the core need to feel safe, bonded, and connected. And that is more of the closeness and, again, the bond and the intimacy. And Susan Johnson and the attachment research and just all that I said about the nervous system. We are social animals. We're wired up to be in connection, and our survival instincts have us in relationships, and those bonds are incredibly important for our well-being. There's so much research that supports all the different domains and how we're benefited from secure functioning relationships. And in adulthood, we tend to bond with an intimate partner, but that can also be structured differently so we can feel that sense of connectivity. And that we also need, and I think Dr. David Schnarch did so much to bring the field of individuality, differentiation. He talked about the
Yeah.
real, most adults don't really grow up, that the growing up is a lot to do with being able to hold on to oneself, self soothe, being able to self validate, and perhaps even relating to this, tolerating some of the annoyance or the discomfort of the tension, and that
Yeah.
actually does really contribute to what he would call, I think, this erotic fire, or the just the polarity of being different, that there's a beauty. I mean, some of the systems that we know are most healthy when they're diverse, right? When we're
Hmm.
same, it's kind of like not that interesting to marry yourself, right? Like we have a dynamic
People don't seek
energy.
that. Yep.
Yeah. And to
Yep.
be able to pursue, like we're growing, we're not the same person throughout the lifespan of our life. And so to
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to feel oneself and what the passion and purpose and the meaning, and to feel like there's freedom for that. And sometimes those needs conflict, and we can
Mm-hmm.
all
Yes, they
probably
do.
conjure
Yeah.
up ideas around that. And they can also really work in a beautiful balance, but that tends to take a lot of consciousness and communication. And I think sometimes, going back to culture, we expect the system of a romantic relationship or marriage to have this container, which I think it does, but to rest in that, and that just carries us as a vehicle. But I like the analogy better, that it's something that's alive, that we nurture, that needs tending to and support to continue to grow and thrive.
Hmm. Yeah. Schnarch was a huge influence on my stuff. Uh,
Oh,
I like to talk about, I mean, I use slightly different terminology. I think it's not exactly the same distinction, but it's very related. I talk about stability and intimacy, not so much autonomy and intimacy, but there's a lot of overlap there. And Schnarch's idea about differentiation, he was an old Bowenian,
uh-huh.
that's the technical
Bowen's
stuff.
home systems or
Bowen family
family
systems, yeah.
systems.
And I really enjoyed how he would it would bring that in. That notion of differentiation is all about tolerating that anxiety.
Yes.
And that's the what I talk about, and I'm sure I got a lot of this directly from Sharj. The chief skill of intimacy is to tolerate anxiety rather than avoid it.
Yeah.
And that kind of growth you're talking about, that sense of feeling alive and the erotic charge, is all about not freaking out at those differences that can be a little this, they can be dismaying in some ways, but they're also exciting.
Absolutely. And I think he came up with the 4 points of balance, which I'm reminded of as you talk about stability, that when we have those 4 points of balance, that it's quite counter to some of, again, the messages and culture that we see the synchronized ice skaters or this like beautiful
Yes.
symbiotic, like just in flow. And like, I mean, that's where we romanticize a bit of that epic, ultimate pinnacle state of romance and fusion.
Hmm.
But the actual, right, when you have two individuals, two people that feel a sense of ground and stability that then get to co-create together. It's a
Hmm.
unique, their relationship is a unique expression of both of them, ideally, and that it is a synergistic, contributing, participating process.
Yeah. You're reminding me in that concept of synchronized skaters.
Yeah.
I think I actually used that image in one of my books, quoting Gottman actually, because
Hmm.
he has in one of his books, in his nerdiest book, I believe, it's one where he talks about all the mathematics of his formulas and stuff. He has a graph where he shows a couple that what he's plotting on over time, it's like a 15-minute interview, and he's plotting over time some measure of how emotional they're getting. And this particular couple, the plot looks like synchronized skaters. They're just
Hmm.
perfectly synchronized together. And of
Hmm.
course, the trick question is then, let me ask you, or actually ask you, Bill, how do you think, as the non-therapist, I'll ask you,
Yeah.
how do you think that couple did over time?
If they're synchronized,
Yeah, they were perfectly like when one would get more emotional, the other would get more emotional, and vice versa.
I guess I would think they would do well.
Yeah, that's what makes it a trick question.
Uh-huh.
But of course, it turned out no, they were toast
Ah.
because what they were doing was triggering each other. It was a measure of emotionality. It wasn't a positive measure. It
Uh-huh.
was a measure of how upset they were getting. I kind of avoided saying it that way to set up the trick better. It was a measure of how upset they were getting. And the trouble is, when one would get upset, so would the other. And the couples that did well, their plots were slightly out of sync.
Mm-hmm.
When one would get upset, the other would feel it, but not as much, and it would help the other one calm down.
Hmm.
And so they were a little bit out of sync with each other, and that's how they would manage those differences. They
Yeah.
would they would do fine over time.
And this is where I think the field of polyvagal theory and
Yeah.
the different systems that come out of that study and the co-regulation, right? That our nervous systems are constantly feeling the nervous systems of those around us, and that we're picking up on the microfacial expressions, the tone of voice, the prosody, and that this has a big impact on our sense of our threat system. So when one is escalated or activated and the other one is able to tolerate a bit more, feel confident or belief that, okay, we're good, we're gonna like just taking that step forward or feeling a little bit more grounded and regulated, that can be very regulating for the couple system, the
Yeah.
co-regulation, which I think is difficult to do when people haven't had, again, harkening back to the attachment research, haven't had the lived experience of having that co-regulation as much, right, and more optimally, that it's harder to access. This is why sometimes, again, coming back to that first question, we may be just the sense of flailing, like how do we get our bearings when so much is, or we're both triggered and we're both activated. It's just like, what is happening? We don't know what's yours, what's mine, what is
Mhm.
ours. So yeah. Judy, I'm curious, do you have any thoughts? I'm wondering.
Well, I don't know. You guys are like in your therapy speak.
We nerded out there.
Yeah, I know. It's easy.
And I
It's so
kind of
easy.
like don't know how to respond to that. So, with this polyvagal thing and
Well, have
Well,
you
that
heard of window of tolerance? It's this it's again another psychology thing, but it's looking at where our no, okay.
I don't think I have heard of that one.
I
Okay.
think that concept may have come up in one of our interviews months ago. But yeah, tell us
Yeah,
about
well,
that.
we've been doing this 5 years. I don't remember every term.
Well, you were remembering something a moment ago, and I was like, "Oh, that's impressive." You were saying Bowen's the systems guy.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was
I've
like,
heard that
"Nice."
one a number of times. Like some of the names keep coming up: Bowen, Schnarch, Height, the Sue Johnson. Yep,
Yeah.
all those guys. So go ahead. You were about to say
I
something.
I have not done an extensive amount of training with polyvagal, but Deb Dana and oh my gosh, help me. He's the founder.
Stephen Porges.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, they've both been on the podcast, and I love their work. Deb Dana
Hmm.
is more of the practitioner, and she's known to be the one that can translate because Stephen Porges is also very much a scientist and being
Mhm.
able to bring a lot of his theory. But essentially, the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body, and it extends from our brain all the way to all of our extremities down through the spinal cord. And it is very connected to and please correct me because I think I might not have this exactly right, but it's connected
Oh,
to
I
our
could pretend I know what I'm talking about, but yeah, I think you know a lot more about it already than I do, but do go on.
well, for people listening, fact check me. So that the nervous system and that ventral is the state where we're regulated. We have the ability to be creative, be social, intimate, and relating. And then the dorsal's the shutdown, and then the activation is, I'm testing myself here. I can't remember, but there's another, so they have three. So that the second is I'll remember in a minute, but it's that fight or flight. It's that activation of like I need like the up out of the skin, I need to move, or I feel threatened and I want to fight, or it's just that kind of activation. And then the shutdown is more of that dorsal. That's where we feel frozen and maybe feel cold, or we feel collapsed. And
It's you
so
playing dead, basically. It's, an animal
playing
playing dead.
dead.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So when we talk about window of tolerance, and I love Deb Dana when she was on the show, she was like, I've done this she's done it her whole career. And I think at that point it was like, I don't know, 30 years, 20 plus years. And she's like, in any given day, I'm noticing my nervous system go to different states. So it's not, the
Hmm.
goal is not to be in ventral or regulated all the time.
Mhm.
Her invitation is to really she has ways in which help people access, so calling it like being in the driver's seat of your nervous system, being able to help guide. So the window of tolerance, there's like a visual. I'm sure you could put it on your show notes, and if you want I can send you a visual. And it's just looking at in between this activation and the dorsal, there's this ability that where our systems are online enough that we're regulated, that we can think clearly. So when we're really upset, this is where people are like, I see tunnel vision, or you're just everything else kind of seems to go away. It's just very basic, rude, crude processing. And then the shutdown, like you said, the collapse, the frozen. So we are not able to really function all that well in either one of those states. And so when we're in
Hmm.
relationship or we're navigating the world, if we can notice that we're not regulated or in that
Mhm.
window, then the goal is to get back into the window of tolerance. So basically, it's getting our systems back online, but also sometimes if we're not even conscious, we may be dysregulated or not in our window of tolerance, and we're trying to make decisions or
Hmm.
Yeah.
relate in really important ways, and we're not actually in our full capacity.
So that I guess would stymie couples from being able to actually move forward or hear each other or be able to
Yes.
relate to one another. Basically,
Yes.
is that's what I'm hearing. Yes.
Yes. Long-winded way, but yes, for me to
No, right
say.
on. Yeah. No, that is it. Yeah, I think so. And that notion of a window of tolerance,
Mhm.
I'll often comment to folks, sometimes you have maybe a few hundred milliseconds, some
Yes.
fractions of a second to intervene with yourself before you cross over into dysregulated.
Yes.
And that window of tolerance, the broader you can make that, and when I've talked about the idea of an emotional bank account, so to speak, which I
Yes.
think is a
Yes.
Gottman concept too, or maybe he has something similar to that,
Yes.
where you have enough goodwill built up
Yes.
that if your partner is sharp with you, if you have enough goodwill built up, the first interpretation you'll tend to go to if things are generally good is, oh, gee, something's bothering you. Let me
Hmm.
help. It's like, oh my God, you just hurt yourself. Let me help you. Maybe I hurt you, but let me help you, But if a couple isn't doing well, if they are already walking on eggshells with each other, how many metaphors can I mix in one
No,
paragraph? Anyway,
I'm with you. Yeah.
And so there are actually physiological reasons behind some of this.
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's
It's not just
yeah.
like being a jerk.
Well, there's
Correct.
physiological reasons behind being a jerk. I mean, that's not an excuse, but it is one can note there's brain stuff that you can invoke to explain that,
Uh-huh.
which I think, and Jessica, I'm curious how you help folks with this, I think that can be helpful for people to recognize. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm responsible for not acting like a jerk, but those times when I feel out of control, I can learn about so that maybe I don't have to be as much out of control. But it's not just that I'm being a jerk, it's that, wow, this is what happens when people get triggered, and maybe I can learn to work with that. How do you help folks with that?
For sure. Yes. Well, I have a couple thoughts here. One of which is if there's an ability to be engaged in some type of therapeutic process, whether or not it's couples coaching with a proficient coach or a therapist or psychologist, that there's an opportunity to explore this so we can see what's going on the inside.
Mhm.
Because what's happening on the outside, it's easily perceived or interpreted based on the partner's lens. And if it's behaviorally that's bad or wrong, right? It's easy to point to that thing and say, that's not okay, which maybe the couple could agree on, but it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily get to your point, which is what's happening on the inside that's fueling this or the nervous system. And this is where I think the attachment research is really, really helpful because if couples are talking about the dishes or the house being clean or the clothes or the kids or what have you, sure, some of these differences stylistically, personality might be part of what is creating some tension. But I think what really fuels it is these deeper attachment needs. And that typically looks and sounds like, I don't, I'm worried you don't care,
Mm.
or I'm not enough for you, or I'm failing you, or I'm letting you down, or you don't love me, or you're not really with me. I'm afraid of you leaving or abandoning me, or you're kind of in it halfway.
Mm-hmm.
So these deeper core attachment needs, or even core feelings of hurt or fear, these type of things are what is juicing. But that's like so often unconscious and not
Yeah.
visible to the partner. We don't walk around with that level of vulnerability. We're getting into our head, justifying what we call would protest why we are thinking and feeling the way that we are.
Yeah.
And then we try to appeal to their intellect. Let me describe to you, or let's litigate what just happened. And
Hmm.
I'm going to
Yeah.
hope you can see my perspective.
Let me give you the data here. Let me
Correct.
present the evidence why your feeling is wrong. That somehow doesn't really
That
work
doesn't
well.
do well.
No, it
No.
doesn't do well. Yeah.
Well, and that's where I think people get into these really negative cycles
Mhm.
where they're perceiving and then assigning a lot of judgments and they're not speaking the same language.
Yeah.
Because one person's protective strategy, just a classic, the pursuer withdrawer, there's the one that's articulating, pointing out, let me show you the evidence.
Is that
And
what you were in your like criticism and defensiveness loop? Is that
that's a huge where that absolutely can show up, where the
uh-huh. So you
person
want to
that
talk a little bit about that?
sure. So, as an example, instead of just pursuing, we'll say the one that is a little bit more critical. And I want to say, I don't think criticism inherently is bad. Yes, I mean, Gottman would say it's one of the number one predictors of divorce and relationship. And it's
Yeah.
the key difference here is, I work with a lot of really high level people who are executives, C-level, scientists, doctors, attorneys, what have you. They need to make critical decisions
Mhm.
throughout
Mm-hmm.
the day. And then even
Right.
if we look at, I've mentioned culture a couple times, if we look at moving through the world and developing, we get grades, we get evaluated, we have certain bars that we're trying to reach, and there's a level of judgment and discernment and criticism that goes into that process. And then if we even look at family, sometimes I think this is changing because as we get to know the value and the importance of emotional awareness, intelligence, and attunement, there's a little bit more room and space for emotions in the family. But if one grows up where emotions aren't really seen and heard, it's more about performing intellect. People learn, oh, not a good move to show my emotions, better move to perform or get it right or do the good thing. And that's my best move. So, and it's adaptive strategy. But what that then means is it can be a critical environment. And then if you look at all these factors, it's honing in this very sharp intellect that is looking for what's in bounds, what's out of bounds, and has a lot of emphasis or a lot of just feeling justified to have the perception. But then when that's being applied in the intimate space, we don't bond to feel critiqued. We don't sign up to say, yes, please, I want all your evaluation and your feedback, unless we're soliciting it. That's a different thing. But
Yeah.
most of the time, we want to feel loved. It's coming back to that safe and secure, like that connection. And this is where that unconditional regard comes into play. We want to feel a sense of safe haven. I can let my guard down. I can just be at ease with you. This is a safe place. So when I'll say the one that's critical approaches their partner with that criticism, I'll just slow down and say, even before the criticism, there's something happening underneath, which is, you didn't make me dinner, or you said you were going to do X and you didn't. I can pop up into protection, that adaptive strategy, and tell you we had an agreement, whatever the criticism is. And then they're going to feel a certain way to their partner. But to slow down here, we don't lead with like, I had thought we had an agreement, or I was hoping you would make me dinner when you were making yourself dinner. And the meaning or the story that I'm telling myself or the place that I go here is that you don't care or that you don't love me. Like, it's kind of not something we lead with. And it does matter. It's not so much just the words, coming back to the neuroception. We actually gain a lot of information through emotion. So if we actually are tuning in and experiencing some level of connection to that fear, that worry of that attachment need of like, I'm worried you don't love me. That's going to be much more visible through the facial expressions, the tone of voice, and the vulnerability is going to be expressed. And that is a very different approach where the partner is going to receive a very different message. So there's so much in this, but to kind of take this further. So the one that is getting criticized, they're likely prone to be defensive because that's not the only thing that's true in the room. I've made dinner 7 times in a row and it's been elaborate and like whatever, they're going to defend. And that actually gets them off on that wasn't actually the point.
Yeah.
So then they're caught up in relitigating and like what happened and building evidence. And then the partner that is feeling defensive, if we add a second layer of the withdrawer, that's the one that's like usually in the camp of like, oh shoot, I let you down, or you're upset with me, I did something wrong, I'm not enough. And then their protective strategy, I'm just grossly stereotyping, is to distance, is to kind of go inward. It's not going to be helpful for me to say anything. I don't want to get it further wrong. So let me just quiet. And then you look at the quiet and the distancing to the one that feels not cared about or fear
You're
of like,
abandoning me even more.
yeah. And then I'm going to get louder.
Right. And where they will often go then, I find, is it will morph often very quickly, especially if they've had practice doing this, it will morph quickly into an argument about how they're arguing.
Yes.
And then they're really in trouble. So,
Right.
because they're not hearing anything, and so
You
there'll be
never
this
listen to
pattern.
me. You're just in, you know,
You
it's like that.
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
always do this. You always
Yes.
do that. You never
Yeah.
do this. Yeah, it
Yeah.
gets
And
into that.
and then the person, whoever raised the initial complaint, often
Mm.
they just have a complaint. They just want to say, "Hey, would you please make me dinner when you make, or I'm bummed, whatever." The person who raises the initial complaint, it's from their point of view, it always turns into, you're yelling at me for how I asked you, but I never get my complaint addressed. And so they end up yelling about that, and it lowers the goodwill even further. Or,
Mm.
my metaphor about the emotional bank account, they get overdrawn and they keep getting hit with overdraft fees,
For
and it
sure.
gets worse and worse. Yeah.
And I would add that it's further complicated if the partner's getting mixed signals. So if it is just simply like, I have a simple request, like that also
Hmm.
happens where somebody's just like, I can't even tolerate that you have even a request because that
Yeah.
implies that I did something wrong, which can also be true. And if the person that is raising the issue actually has tender feelings, as much as I've been here, diplomatic, choosing what I felt like was all the right words, and feeling somewhat regulated, and still it is perceived and felt that there's some charge in me. And so my partner's like, you're saying it's just a request, but there's something else here that you're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And so when that's not, that can feel confusing and a little like uh uncertain. And then that can get wires crossed pretty easily too.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can invoke here. You've heard who I've talked with some of our guests about internal family systems.
Mhm.
We're all multiple people.
Yeah.
Dick Schwartz's thing about we're all multiple people, or Jill Bolte Taylor's thing about how we're all multiple people. She has a different way of modeling it.
Yeah.
But I always love that. It's like, well, of course you're getting mixed messages. You're several different people, and we all are.
Yeah.
And to be able to not panic at that is also key, I think, in helping people get through that kind of stuff and relax and sort of even appreciate a little bit of the absurdity of it, which is often a path toward healing. I am curious, like, how do you help folks? Like, what do
Yeah.
you do to help them get past that kind
Yeah.
of stuff?
Yes, I'm super intrigued to answer that. Did you want to
Yeah.
comment, Judy? It seemed like
No,
you.
no, no. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. So I think to the point of orienting and focus when there is so much happening, whether or not it's multiple experiences in one person's body and felt sense. And then you have a second person, if we're talking about two people here, and then their couplehood, it's a lot happening. So how do we orient? How do we focus? And I think that a real strong principle that I like to work with does come out of the EFT therapeutic principles, and that is to really look at creating safe space. And this is so fascinating. If I can harken back to the two conflicting needs and also
Mhm.
Susan Johnson's work and David Schnarch, at the time that I engaged with the EFT, I had been getting messages that they were not friends, like not them as people, but the modalities. They weren't
Or that they
able to
weren't
work.
compatible.
They weren't
Yeah. Yeah.
compatible. I
Actually, just
remember.
mentioned EFT, emotional freedom technique. That's Sue Johnson's.
Okay.
That's
No,
the
no,
the stuff
emotional.
founded in the attachment theory stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
emotional freedom is the tapping.
Emotionally
Emotionally
focused therapy.
focused.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I mixed those two up.
And they're
Right. They are
so
both EFT.
easily.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah. But Sue Johnson stuff is what you're talking about.
yes. And
Yeah.
so when I was listening, I was tracking because I very much loved the differentiation work. I do think that's incredibly important. So I was like, how do these fit? And what I experienced was, so in the EFT practice, whether or not there's someone guiding it or people are practicing based on her books at home, there's a real ability to reflect around what's getting activated in my system. What is my real underlying fear or attachment, worry, or need here? And can I just hold some space for that and just see if that's alive and operating here? And that if we can have some awareness and understanding of that, then we get to turn towards and I'll talk about that in a minute. But where I felt like the David Schnarch's work is the stability of, can I unpack, can I get a little bit more clear around what is driving my emotion here? What is driving my activation?
Mm.
What is this about? And that is self kind of reflection and inquiry that I do think requires some self validation, some self soothing, some self tolerating, some of those difficult. Because when that happens in session, there's a therapist or a coach that's assisting that unpacking and helping them, like, that makes sense, and just validating, and like, can you share a little more? So it's just offering a lot of opportunity to feel safe enough to go deeper. And then when there's a bit of a core experience, then it's the opportunity to, would you like to talk to your partner and share a little? I mean, they're listening, they know it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
new information necessarily, but the experience of sharing that vulnerable inside part usually is night and day different as far as how it feels to their partner. And typically, when people have been together for a long time, there's a lot of blocks that can run interference, but typically the responsiveness is so much more there that
Mm-hmm.
you feel the tenderness and the vulnerability of your partner. The natural inclination is like, "Oh, I see you, I feel you, I care, I want to help," which is very different
Mm-hmm.
than I'm bad and I'm wrong and I want to go away or
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
defend
yeah.
myself.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so this is does fit with the Gottmans around the soft start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different than the coming
We've
in
talked
hot.
about that. I think, the notion especially he found that's especially because it's women who usually bring up the problem, at least in his research.
Right.
And so it's especially for women the soft start seems to be hugely predictive of success in a couple. And
Which,
I always like to point out, it's not a wimpy start. It's not, it can be quite assertive,
no.
but it is
Yes,
very much, but it's also not attacking. It's,
correct.
there's this making room for the other person in the startup.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when there's this, and I find often these vulnerable feelings are the juice and the charge, and that's really what's being activated. And when couples aren't, or partners aren't talking about that, they're going to spend hours, days, years, what have you, trying to solve and communicate better.
Yes. And you may recall my second book, the title was It's Not About Communication. And it's very much about debunking, I think, debunking that idea that, oh, you just learn a bunch of communication rules and then you'll function well. And of course, as I always like to note, and Gottman points this out as well in a slightly different context, but acting like a couple that's doing well won't make you do well. They're acting that way because they're doing well. They're
Yeah.
not doing well because they're acting that way. So yes, they seem to be not attacking each other. They seem to be using I statements without being formal about it. They seem to be actually listening to each other. Yeah, that's all true because they're doing well. If you mimic that, it isn't going to make you do well. It just give you something else to argue about.
Yeah.
You're doing it wrong, which is often how that turns out.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what's sad is that there's such an opportunity here that if couples are investing all their time and energy and effort into communicating and going in these cycles, it's quite exhausting because at some point you just like, okay, this isn't working, or you don't get
Yeah.
it, or we're not, maybe even start doubting or questioning. But the sad part of me is like this, they're not even talking about, or they're not revealing or sending real clear signals around is what is at the crux or the core.
Yeah.
And then what is additionally sad to me is that we have such an opportunity and partnership to respond. And that is so connecting. And it's so healing to have your person who you love more than anything respond to you in gentleness when there's so much tenderness. Like it makes me emotional because I just feel and see what a difference maker it is and how it can essentially move mountains or really have some start of significant repair after years and years of injury. It's just quite
Mm-hmm.
profound.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, what occurs to me to ask based on that, um, I'll connect this to something. It's actually a chapter in one of my books I did a funny video about it some years ago, the whiteboard video.
Mm-hmm.
How to get your reluctant guy, it's aimed at women, of course, how to get your reluctant guy to try couples therapy with you, to go to couples therapy with you. And it's because I'm imagining, the very things you were just talking about, that the practices of EFT that are aimed at eliciting that tenderness. For a lot of, and I will be stereotypically gendered here, for a lot of guys, that they have to already be willing to do that in a sense. They have to, they have to be attuned to that possibility before they even get there. And a lot of guys wouldn't get there unless they have some reason to feel like it's possible even. Is that,
I do. And I would also add, Bruce, that I have a lot of men in my practice that, whether or not it's individual with relationship concerns or in couplehood, that are longing to feel more known and seen and heard. It might
oh
not
yeah.
look the same and the same kind of verbalizing, but deeply alone in their lived experience and feeling grossly misunderstood.
Hmm.
And so to have an opportunity, if we're going to speak in kind of the frame I just mentioned one example, to slow down the system or the interaction enough for there to be room that their partner can be interested and also trusting that, because when I talk about the perception of you don't care, you're turning away. I mean, factually, like one could like survey however many people and get, yeah, most people would agree that like if you turn away, you're not that interested.
Hmm.
But that's not what's happening on the
Yeah.
inside, right? And so to feel that their partner is getting them. And so to your point, I think just to have an avenue for that or to have room for that, how people are primed for that. Yeah, I think a lot of stereotypically, I think the percentage of therapists and coach is probably more predominantly women. And like it's just,
Hmm.
and then if it's talk therapy, like, there's a lot of ways in which that fits better for female bodied people.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Did I speak to what you were saying or did I miss it?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it's just I just find it's an interesting
Yeah.
um, problem as a male therapist, it's interesting
Yes. Yeah.
because it is much more of a feminine space,
Yeah.
overall,
Yeah.
and yet everything you said about guy speaking for all men, like I can speak for
There
all
you
men,
go. Go ahead.
why not? You can both speak for all women. I'll speak for all men. No, that sense of wanting to be seen and heard. Oh my God, yeah, I think lots of guys, we all want that, I think, and
Yes.
many of these
Yes.
guys who will present hard, and present that they're not going in all that emotional claptrap, are deeply wanting that,
Yes.
but to even entertain that possibility
Right.
you know, is tricky to get
Yes.
them to go, is a really tricky thing. The one thing I pointed out in my video about this, which makes sense to me, but actually I'm curious to the two women in this conversation, because, it's rather presumptuous of me to say I'm going to tell women what to tell men. I can speak from a male perspective. But the one thing from a male perspective that I'm offering to to women who are trying to get a guy to do it is it certainly doesn't work to shame him. It doesn't work to present the evidence. Do you know what I mean? It it might work to threaten him. I mean, in the sense of, well, it's this or divorce, but even more so, it works to recognize that his fear, which is what it is, of course,
Yes.
most of us won't admit it is fear. We'll
Yes.
talk about, well, you're the one with the trouble with the problem,
Mm-hmm.
so why don't you go?
Mm-hmm.
Or, if you
Exactly.
weren't dissatisfied, we'd be fine. So, or it's really stupid, or it's only for crazy people, or whatever the things would trot out. But mostly it's terror because it's not that we don't care, it's that we do. It's
Yes.
that, oh my God, we're going to go there. The therapist is going to side with you because clearly I'm a jerk, or the therapist is going to think I'm a jerk, or the therapist is either a woman or thinks like a woman and doesn't understand me being a man and doesn't want me to be. And, all of those fears,
Yes.
all of which are legitimate. They're
Totally.
legitimate fears. And I think when the partner can actually say, I see why you're afraid.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I still want to do it because I'm worried we're going to break up. I don't want to lose you, but you're going to lose me. I'm going to lose you. Then the guy might actually listen. It's like, yeah, but I'm terrified. You said, well, yeah, so am I. I get it. You're not crazy to be terrified. All of those fears are justifiable. That to me, I don't know, I'm curious about either of your
I
reactions to
think
that.
that pretty well sums it up. I mean, you're my second marriage, my last marriage. Um, but
Hmm.
yes, it was very much like that in the first marriage, and he didn't want to go for couples therapy or any therapy, and that's why I'm not with him anymore. So, it was
Yeah.
just too many problems that we couldn't overcome.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to work on it, and can't work on your own.
Mhm.
Well, I guess you can work on your own. My own said, you know,
Yes, yes. Yeah, you didn't necessarily feel, I mean, but just in what you're describing, that he was willing to participate in something different. And
mm-hmm.
yeah.
It's just, of course, sitting here with a huge conflict of interest, feeling like I'm so glad that didn't work out.
Yeah.
But having said that, it's like, could you imagine if you had been able to relate to his fear? Do you think that would have made any difference?
Possibly.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is
I'm
very
glad you didn't,
possible.
but
But yeah, I don't think I had that clarity
yeah,
back
you were
then.
much younger, of
Yeah,
course.
I was
Yeah.
younger and yeah,
Yeah.
and haven't had a couples therapy podcast for 5 years where I could actually
Mhm.
articulate some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. And I think the collective is evolving, and I know it's not, there's still so much opportunity in men's development and just as a society and even gender, as you mentioned, the binary, like speaking in those terms. But I think that there's so much more awareness around mental health, emotional intelligence, and also just real emotion or relational skills, and that there is more voice for the men's experience or man's experience. And
Yeah.
I do think I don't know if you ever looked at any of John Wellwood's work. I really,
No.
he's also passed. He looked at a lot of the, he had a bit of a spiritual component, but a psychologist. And he, one of the things he said, that I know he's not the only one that talks about this, but he was talking about just from an evolutionary standpoint and just also how we're socialized, that again, speaking in the two genders here, that boys typically play and play sports and do activities together. And so physiologically, they tend to be a little bit more ready or quick, right? They might be able to scan their environment, or they're like a little bit more physically ready to engage. And when we talk about sex, like more physically ready stereotypically for sex, intercourse, where conversely, a woman, she is much more quick and ready. I mean, we look at adolescent girls, like just also, I remember on a side note, Susan Johnson looking at the research of the brain, and that men and women have the same structure and capacity for empathy and emotional relating, and that it's just the language is the difference. And
Ah,
that
yeah.
parents talk to their daughters usually about more about emotion. And so
Hmm.
if you look at the lived experience of a female person, that they're likely have a lot more reps of identifying emotion, talking about
Hmm.
emotion, relating to others around emotion. So they're
Mm-hmm.
typically a little bit more quick and adept at their emotional world, their internal world. And
Oh,
so in
yeah. And
relationship, they're more ready. Go
you
ahead.
can tell me if this is true or if you know it, because I
Uh-huh.
remember reading this probably 20 years ago, but I remember somebody said that male and female brains differ a lot in the number of connections in the corpus
Yes.
callosum. That
That's
women
my
have
understanding.
like 25% more fibers in the corpus callosum than men. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I think the female brain, I think she may have even been on, you can put the link to that book, but uh, yes, the connectivity and the ability to access all parts of the brain, where stereotypically the male brain is much more compartmentalized. Oh, we're doing
Yeah.
sex. Okay, then, but the
Yeah, it's like a
female's like,
language.
all the different things also are true in the intimate space. Like it's not
Yeah.
so disparate.
So women have more language for emotion. For example,
Yeah. Well, and then
there's much more language for what's going on more diffusely.
yes. And if we're
Yeah.
talking about a heterosexual couple, her partner, male partner, isn't as quick. So maybe even some of the not responding or distancing a little is like, I don't even know. Like, I need a little time. This is the old kind
Mhm.
of classic going into the man cave to like, let me just feel and let me process. My
Oh
husband,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I see that with women will often be astonished. And of course, as a man, I'm not astonished at this at all, that a man can literally not know how he feels.
yes,
It's not only he doesn't have language for it, he doesn't have consciousness of it. How
correct.
could you not know that? The woman will often say or imply, it's like,
Right.
you
And it
must, that
takes,
can't be true. Yeah, it's true.
and it takes a circling of like, unpacking and going deeper and create, having a little bit more room and space to kind of access,
Hmm.
and then the willingness to come back and hopefully the system's safe enough to then have those conversations. And that is so much more fruitful. And then just to finish the loop here, that females typically need more time in the physical space, as I mentioned, sexually. So where guys like, why are, you're not aroused or you're not ready? And like, I know that men who have lived a little bit longer might know, but just how bodies are different. And that there's like, I had an interview guest, this is her world. She said giving, and people say maybe 20 minutes for an opening, but she was suggesting 2 hours minimum for the intimate space to really luxuriate and allow the body to open, to really be in a place of, yeah. So I was like, 2 hours. Wow. Like that
Well,
is
then
something
there's what a friend of ours, just Sebastian, a
for
friend of ours. Uh,
foreplay. Yeah.
well, and she said one of the things she loves about her husband is that if he wants connubial bliss on Saturday night, he knows to take out the trash on Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and with all of that that implies, yeah, indeed, that quote unquote foreplay
Yes.
it's measured in days or weeks. It's
Yes.
and the notion I love, you've heard me talk about erotic charge.
Hmm.
That's there in a couple that's doing well.
Yeah.
That's there when they're doing the dishes. That's there all. There's parts of that happening a lot. I just met a couple the other day for the first time, and it was fascinating because a lot of what they were talking about, they are so good at stability. They're so good. They've been together a long time. Their problem is always in the intimate space. And she was saying she likes having sex with him, but when he won't say it in advance. He'll just sort of lie down and say, "Want to have sex?" And she will say, that's not how I work. And again, this isn't a couple because I've worked with a lot of couples where they've been like sexually estranged for a while. It's like, and she's
Yeah.
just disgusted by the whole possibility, not of sex at all, but of sex with him. This isn't that couple. When they have it, they both like it.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
loves him and she wants him,
She wants some advance
but
notice.
and yeah, right. And it's not just advance notice, it's sort of a sense of connection in advance.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That because
Yes.
she's a woman, and like I need to tell that's mansplain to you, that phenomenon is we're really different that way.
Mhm.
And I think what's hard for men a lot is we don't like going in spaces where we're not the experts. We don't like going in spaces where we're relatively the idiots,
Mhm.
and we are when it comes to a lot of this. And it's a difficult place for guys to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's asking a lot to develop and grow aspects of self. I mean, this just widens the conversation to just masculinity and like, I mean, here stereotypically, I mean, I've even had a guest talk about its gender abuse to basically the range of masculinity is horny or angry. Like those
Ah.
are the two states, like the full range of humanness, like that doesn't exist.
I mean, there's something in between. I'm sorry.
I know we're laughing, but I mean, it's also really like there's a lot of ways in which this hasn't been true, that the full range of the experience is welcome and that the expression for a man and what that looks like. And so, yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Indeed, it
A
is.
whole other topic.
Well, how can people get in touch with you? And actually, why don't you say something about like what you offer? Because I know there's some stuff you offer that may be of interest to people seeing this.
Well, thank you. As you noted, I have a podcast. It's the Empowered Relationship Podcast. And initially, I delivered all the content, and then I have been interviewing other experts and people in the field that are contributing. And Bruce, you were on the show. I loved your episode and your work. And it's just a great opportunity to help people feel better equipped to negotiate the landscape of intimacy. I know that there can be a lot involved in that. And there's so much more to be found on my website, which is drjessicahiggins.com. I do couples coaching and individual coaching. I usually have a wait list, but I do my best to help people have what they need and be on their way. And I also have some group work that I do to learn and be in practice of these relational skills. And I also have, for a very select few, for people who want to be out in nature, an adventure retreat. And that will be in
Oh.
2026. I was a wilderness therapist for a period, and I was also in my dissertation referencing how some of the hard skills of being in nature very much correlate and are very symbolic of some of the relational skills. And so being able to implement and be immersed a little more to offer the opportunity for more practice and connection.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Well, we'll make sure to put that website, a link to that website on our show notes for this.
Thank
you so much for doing this.
Yes, thank you for having me. I've loved
Oh,
being
it's
here.
great.
And
A lot of fun.
good.
Thank you. Welcome back. We hope you found a lot of good information in that interview with Dr. Jessica Higgins. And did we want to say a lot more now, or just wrap it up?
I think we can just wrap it up at this point.
Okay. So,
hey, buy our books.
Buy our books. Follow us. Tell your friends about it, and do all that stuff.
All of the above, absolutely.
Okay.
And so until next time,
Remember, be kind.
don't panic.
And have faith.